return to public session at 8:56 p.m. The parent and district have reached an agreement regarding the recommended expulsion. Therefore, no action by the board is necessary. So we will continue on with our agenda. Strategic priorities. Our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. There are 4 strategic priorities to the plan: transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. Our strategic priorities give actionable focus to our district's purpose and mission and guide the work of our strategic plan. Next on the agenda is public comment. There are no slips. We do have one agenda change. The following change was made to the agenda: removal of action item under Section K, Business Services, GPD Group Proposal for Architectural and Engineering Services for Baseball, Softball Fields Renovation Project. Next, we have approval of minutes. Motion to approve the minutes of the September 25th, 2025 regular board meeting. All audio recordings will be a permanent part of the minutes and are available upon request through the treasurer's office. Video recordings shall be maintained based on the availability of the selected digital online platform. All right, and then next we have Board of Education Other, a levy bond discussion. And I was going to turn it over to Dr. Abt to get us started. He prepared some slides for us.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Hausum. So first thing we want to do on the second slide is loop back from our conversation at our past meeting about whether or not we would continue our participation in the OFCC and ELP participation. Participation. So the board had a lengthy discussion last meeting, and we said we would come back and give direction at this meeting. So I'll turn it back over to you for that discussion, or to see if there's anything George and I can provide for you to help support your new decision.
Did anyone have any further questions on the OFCC? Hearing none, any thoughts since we've had 2 weeks to think about it, deliberate?
I'll start. I continue to look at it as an economic decision or a financial decision, and the benefit of going through the OFCC process, I don't think we need to actually sign up for it to get the standards as far as building and construction. I think we can assure the public that we will build top-notch buildings without the additional expense and hoops of the OFCC program. And it will allow us to make some judicious decisions that will ultimately save money on what we build. And so I think, and I have heard nothing, and I wanted to poll everyone at this table, I've heard nothing to the contrary. No one has said, no, this is how you actually save money or increase the money that the state of Ohio will eventually apportion to us, etc. So at this point, I haven't heard anything to the contrary, so I'm comfortable supporting the decision not to go forward under that program.
I can agree with that, knowing that we are going to build quality schools, and if we can save the taxpayer that money up front rather than waiting the 10 to 12 plus years for the OFCC to refund us, I'd rather save the money up front.
Especially since we haven't seen anything yet, or word of anything yet from last time.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. Well stated.
Okay.
With that, I'll talk to our partners to see if there needs to be official board action to rescind, or if we just need to tell them that we're not continuing. So I'll look back.
Great.
Cameron,
Yes.
we'd also like to see the updated numbers, right? Because the estimates we've seen so far assume going through that program. So obviously we want to see those updated numbers as soon as possible.
Got it. Going to the next slide. George, Laura, Michelle, and I had the opportunity to be on a call with our partners to take a look at what would be a tentative timeline to complete the yellow plan as stated. So With this was GPD, who's been our partner in this pre-bond work, as well as a construction firm that works in the education space of school building. And so we talked about, the first question was, can you physically build three elementary schools at the same time? And the answer was yes. There was not concerns with materials. There was not concerns with workforce. They've done it before. This company that we talked to said, hey, we've done other projects where we've built 3 buildings like this at the same time. We don't see that as an issue. So if you take a look at that in the yellow plan, which is building 3 new elementary buildings, one at the Chapman, one at Sarrar, and one at the old Albion Middle School property, if the bond issue would pass in May of '26, they feel confident that those buildings would be open and ready for students to start there in the fall of 2029. It's important to note that when they say start there, that means that the new building will be done and ready to use, but in the front lawn of 2 of those buildings will be the old building. There'll still be some active construction there in terms of getting the playground set, getting the outside, landscape done. So complete project finalization wouldn't be until the next fall. So just to kind of level set expectations that buildings would be open fall of 2029, project would be fully completed with all the outside and exterior work in fall of 2030. So the second thing we took a look at is Kinsner is slated to still be an elementary school, but it's slated to have some renovations done to it. If you remember, a handful of years ago, we had a multi-year renovation project at the high school. The high school had available space to where you could zone different sections of the high school off. We don't have that flexibility at an elementary school, and we have our youngest learners there. So the idea would be that phase 2 would start after phase 1 was fully completed, which means those 3 new elementary buildings would be up and running. All kids would, be assigned to their new schools, and which means Muraski would be vacated at that same time. We would then take all of the students at Kinsner Elementary School. Now, I'm going to preface this with, nobody loves these ideas, right? These are not like, wow, we've landed on this great idea. We've landed on the idea that helps us renovate a building in a 1-year time period without students in the building, and that's to move our students and staff from Kinsner Elementary School for the 29-30 school year and have them go to school in Muraski. That would allow the renovation to take place in 1 school year, and then in 2030-31, our staff and students would return to Kinsner and continue their education there. If we would try to do an inhabited renovation, if it's even possible, it would extend it to a 2-year process instead of a 1-year process based on the estimations of our construction partners. Finally, the last phase would be Muraski. So that means Muraski would not be completely vacated and open for construction and renovation until the summer of 2030. The project would be completed and ready to go by the fall of 31 or 32, depending on the scope. So what I mean by that is one of the things that we're going to share and talk about in the next slide is, do we keep Muraski as a combination administrative offices and preschool, or do we just leave it as a preschool and administrative offices finds another space? Obviously, if it's just a preschool, they can feel they can get it done in a year. If it's going to be a combined building, it would take 2 years to get done. And so that is what we learned throughout that process of a potential timeline. So I think it's important to note that when you say the yellow plan, it's not like in 3 years it's all going to be done because of the complexities that are in the project. So George, Laura, Michelle, you were on the call. Any other context or color you want to add?
I think that was a good summation of what we heard.
I agree.
So this was just a heads up and keeping the board informed of what's been shared with us. But any questions from any of the other board members that weren't on the call? I'd be more than happy for the team to note those if we've got to find answers or talk about them tonight.
I'd just like to compliment the idea. I never imagined being able to upgrade Kinsner and not have to deal with all of the back and forth. I mean, it was significant when we did it at the high school. And
It's still in the building.
with the
Yeah.
kids still in the building. And we made it work, but it was a lot of jockeying. It was, it was temporary trailers. It was a lot of back and forth and compromises and asking for students and parents and staff to be flexible. So when I first saw this, the light bulb went off, and I was impressed at how clever it was and how it really could be very advantageous. I also would assume it would be cost saving, because I would assume that doing the remodel while the kids are in the building, just naturally over 2 years is going to have costs that would be eliminated by being able to come in and upgrade without that consideration. So that's another thing that's attractive to me. So I'm glad we had the ability to have someone come up with that idea. And, I would, all things equal, whatever's going to be better for the taxpayer, I think that's what we have to, how we have to approach it. And then the same thing, as far as, the administrative offices, I think we need to look at our options, look at what the cost implications of those options, short and long-term are, and then make an effective decision.
How does that, with the children going to Kinsner, going to Moraski, how does that change like class sizes and whatnot when they go to Moraski?
It would not. So right now, Kinsner and Moraski are both of our largest buildings. And so size-wise, we'd have to take a look at it when we see where, in those years, where those are. But it would be a pretty good fit, especially with the mobile units that we have out there too. So I don't see major issues with the move over there. And we'd be able to keep the same class sizes
And like you said, starting out, this is not ideal.
Right.
No one wants
Yeah.
their child to go, have to switch buildings, but in the long run, I think it's going to be
Yeah.
the most effective.
And it's not that long ago where we were moving families and parents
Yeah.
between Moraski and Kinsner,
It was one of those.
not because we were looking forward to new buildings or upgraded buildings, but just because we were trying to figure out how to balance where kids go to school and class sizes and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So all in all, it's no fun, but I'd rather be doing it because we have a defined good reason to do it for a year.
All right, so the last thing I wanted to share is give an update. At the end of September, we had an elementary facilities task force meeting, and one of the things that we did was we took a look at a couple key questions, and the members that were able to be there shared some thoughts. So the first one, we're going to start with the left-hand column, is we've got to give guidance to our GPD as to what level of architectural renderings do we want prior to going on the ballot, right? So if you take a look at, these are all things that I've learned, right? So as you take a look at it, you don't actually start designing the buildings until after a bond passes. You start taking a look at space, right? We've been having meetings to say how many classrooms do we believe we're going to have, and how many, do we want, collaborative spaces, all of those, how many music rooms do we want, what is the offices, do we want, parent volunteer rooms, all of these things, media center. So we are taking a look at that to say, what do we think we need? Does it fit in the space that we believe it should fit in? And that generates cost that goes to the voters for the ask for the bond project. But it doesn't go to, what is the face of the building going to look like? What is the entryway going to be? What's the color scheme? What's the layout? All of those things will be done after a bond is passed when you actually design the building. So the question for us is just that. What level of detail do we want to have in our pre-bond architectural renderings? Like I use an example of Hudson. It was very important for Hudson when they built their middle school that they had an exact rendering of what that middle school was going to look like. They actually created a 3D visual movie that you could go through and see what it would look like. There's others that were more conceptual ideas, right? Of didn't want to get into that level of specificity, but gave a concept as to, hey, this is what the buildings could look like. And as you take a look at building 3 buildings, some of the terminology they use is they could be twins, right? You could have 3 buildings that are identical to one another, and we just have them in the 3 locations. They can be cousins, meaning maybe there's some slight differences between the buildings, or the frontage looks different, but the internals are kind of similar. So we have a lot of those opportunities to look at. So the questions are there. I'm not going to read those to you, but if you take a look at what the group came up with, they shared some priorities from their perspective. So some of those were share what we have now versus what it could be, look at the function of the space and how it matches teaching concepts, taking a look at making sure we're also including how will Kinsner look versus the brand new buildings, what challenges and opportunities do we currently have that we're trying to solve, and having a visual and the text to meet all community needs. And so it finally came with a recommendation that this group said, we recommend a level of detail that can visually and in text share where we are and where we're going. This should also consider Kinsner and Muraski renovations, as well as the similarities, variations between the 3 new buildings. So this is not anything the board needs to give direction on tonight. But it is giving you time to think and process as we go through this discussion, that we will need to give our architects direction as to what level of specificity we want to be able to share when we talk about these 3 buildings, as well as the renovations to the 2 buildings. The second one is, as we've alluded to on the last slide, is the future of Muraski. So it was simply that. What do you see as the benefits and challenges of making Muraski just a preschool and leasing office space for the administrative offices? So some of the things that came out as priorities is getting the preschool in one location that's safe and developmentally and age appropriate, and the understanding that when we invest in our preschool, we're investing in all of our schools and our community. And the recommendation that came out of that group was we recommend educating staff members and the community about the building conditions, preschool needs and requirements, the functionality of the administration, and the impact financially if Muraski is kept for preschool only, rather than also renovating and constructing for administrative building. So what I would ask the board to start thinking about and considering is just a simple pros and cons to both of these, right? If you take a look at just having the preschool, we are projecting that we will need 10 classrooms to be right fit for the preschool for the foreseeable future. Muraski right now has, in the 2005 edition, has 8 classrooms. Now we've got to look at, there's all sorts of legal requirements for licensing for preschool from the state, and there is a possibility that those 8 classrooms may only be able to be 6 classrooms because of putting bathrooms in there and the space that's needed. But you're going to need to add some construction, but not as much. If you put the administrative offices in there, the plan would be that the administrative offices would take the 2005 renovation, and that would be renovated for office space. And then the preschool would be all new construction. So that's kind of both concepts that are there. The option for us is you can go lease space in business parks. We've looked at 2 properties that could be cost effective and are great properties. The challenge is we no longer have a permanent home. And in talking to the owners of these properties or the leasing agents of these properties, there's a willingness to say, hey, we can possibly be in discussion for a longer term lease, but there's always that risk of, for these buildings, we're only taking a portion. And if they get a tenant that comes in and say, hey, we want the whole building, as a business decision, I can understand them saying at the end of the lease, you guys are no longer here. So that's the risk. Financially, we would save. They're still doing the cost estimates, but it would be a significant savings if we don't go to Muraski as an administrative office. And the amount it would cost us to lease space would be significantly less, but we don't have a permanent home.
What happens to the Lund Road preschool building?
That's to be determined. So that's something that is still, we are looking to retain that property and retain the building itself, and use it for a new purpose.
Could that be administration?
It doesn't have the space for us. Third option that's not on here is you could build a new standalone administrative office building that's not attached to a building that's right-sized and, you know, fits us. So for example, Brunswick is a part of their last project. Their high school project is building a new administrative office building. So third option. But again, things to be thinking about. The Muraski project is a little more timely that we're going to have to give guidance because obviously that's going to influence what is actually in the bond project versus pre-bond architectural renderings. We're going to have a little more time. So just want to get those on your radar to be thinking about as we continue decision-making for the bond. Questions or thoughts or things, informational requests you guys have of me that I can work on?
Are all elementary school buildings generally one story, one floor?
Depends. Ours, I believe, are slated to be two stories. So it's about the land that you have and the number of students. So there'll be, based on the fit plan that was created, there'd be portions of the building that were obviously one story, but the instructional wing would be 2 stories to make it fit.
This may be too tactical for this meeting, but when we get to the appropriate time, I think moving from the yellow plan to a branded label that's aspirational in nature would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then thinking about the detail question you had around the architectural renderings, whatever is going to look great for a road show. Maybe we have some space at the South Park Mall that's kind of semi-permanent that we could have some really great renderings so folks can see this. And then I would highly recommend we have something that's digital that we can share. I'm sure those are all things that are being thought through, but I think getting this out and having investing in the materials for a good road show and storytelling, both digitally and physically, I think will be really important.
Yeah.
The one thing I would add for the leasing of space, based on our 5-year forecast that was recently presented, for any long-term lease, we can only certify the funds that are available, the years that the funds are available. When we were looking at the other property, it came up as well, so we can get into a longer-term lease, but it'd be 1-year renewals, based on the years that the funds are available. So just something to keep in mind.
I'm sorry for speaking on top of you there, George.
Oh, go ahead.
You mentioned, Cameron, you mentioned that you wouldn't have a permanent space if you leased the space potentially. Is that important to the community to know where the administrative offices are? I mean, I would assume it's not less than 5 years at a time that you'd be moving.
Yeah, the concern would not be so much where we are, because I think that's flexible, right? Other than the cost of moving, but it would be more of, would we not be able to find a desirable space that fits us? So that's been the challenge. Is I've worked with Brent Painter in the city to look at available spaces. There's not many, or there's not many in locations that would be desirable for our families to travel to in terms of distance.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that George knows this from his time in Cleveland. There's also there's office space available, but having a public organization come in that's going to have public visitors is not something some people want to bring into, if they have a floor for us, so to speak.
Any other questions?
I was just going to suggest, as far as, I concur with Kevin, we need to have a visual, digital version, and I think we need a model. I don't think we need 3 models. I think we need a general model, and we can put the little asterisk saying, you know, the exact color, et cetera, remain to be determined. But as Haley already alluded to, I think we need a model, and I think it has to have 2 floors so that the public can actually say, oh, okay, I can wrap visually what we're proposing. I really like the idea of a permanent place to have it so that it gets maximum exposure. So the idea of architecting it to the point of here are the plans, that's too soon and too early. We need to get the trust. But the idea of being at the other end of it where, oh, we're going to make 3 schools and we'll figure it out. you know, we need to have stuff that people can look at, can touch, can understand and grasp, and it has to have enough specificity that whatever we deliver matches. Other than that, the details we can work through, and then I just, I don't want it to sound cavalier, but the leasing space issue for me is just going to come down to economics. If it's available, what's the price? How long of a lease can we do? And then comparing it to the cost of new construction. Because while it is true, if we would lease it, what happens if we have to move again? But that what if isn't like we're going to get a eviction notice and you have 30 days to be out. The initial term would be long enough that if we didn't renew it or what have you, we'd have enough time to figure it out.
Well, thank you to you and the task force. Michelle and I were able to be at that meeting. There was some great dialogue, good conversations. So we appreciate their time and consideration for this.
Yeah.
All right. Back to me.
Well, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything for George's report, so
Oh,
if it's
yeah.
okay, I'll just go into mine.
Yep.
So with that, under business services, there's one item that we entered an agreement with Southeast Security for the purchase and installation of camera servers to replace a failed server. The total cost for the purchase is $41,060.07, and funds are coming from the Permanent Improvement Fund. Moving on to curriculum, we have one trip that Strongsville High School varsity team traveled to Columbus, Ohio to participate in the Chiller Thanksgiving Classic Hockey Tournament November 28th to 30th. Tournament fee is $1,200 and will be paid by the district. Transportation is covered by parents' vehicles, and lodging and meals will be paid by the participating students.
Dr. I just noticed the typo to correct. The fund number is listed 003, it should be 300.
Okay.
So I'm going to fix it real quick.
Thank you, George. Under student services, there's 4 items for your consideration. The first is a recommendation that we enter an agreement with STEPS Education Group for placement of a student with disabilities for this school year with a start date of September 22nd in the amount of $76,144.40. Item 2 is a recommendation that we enter into a service agreement with Family First Solutions, LLC, to provide professional development, consultation services, and crisis counseling services in the amount of $30,000 per the linked agreement. Item 3 is to enter into agreement with Trust the Journey Academy for placement of a student with disabilities for this school year. The annual tuition rate is $74,250, a one-time registration materials fee of $500, and extended school year in the amount of $6,700 for a total of $81,450 per the linked agreement. And item 4 is the same recommendation for a different student. However, there will also be an additional fee of $4,000 per month if it is determined that one-on-one support is necessary for the student. Under human resources, we do have a retirement for your consideration effective at the end of the school year. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the adoption of consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type-action consent, which items constitute the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless a member of the board or the superintendent requests that such items be removed from the consent calendar and voted upon separately. Do I have anything that needs to be removed? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mr. Griffin. Can you take the roll, George?
Yep, Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next, we have miscellaneous for Board of Education. Other, does anyone have any miscellaneous? Hearing none. We do have need to go back into executive session to,
Consider the employment of a public employee.
do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion carries. We will enter into executive session at approximately 9:30. We do not see any need to resume public session, so I want to wish everybody a good night.